Hi, everyone. How are you? This is Maria from Pause Alchemy of Women, coming to you with the 21st podcast. Today, we're going to talk about a subject that I think is super interesting, feminism, and how it relates to menopause and the transition to through and after menopause. Um, so I got inspired by talking about this by a very wonderful documentary that is on Netflix. I think it's only on Netflix, but it's called Feminist. What were they thinking? So it's really interesting. And so feminism is a funny word. And to be considered a feminist, not everyone wants to accept that idea, which I've always found really ridiculous. Like when a woman would say, "No, I'm not a feminist," I thought, well, what the hell? If you're not a feminist and you're a woman or someone who identifies as a woman, it's to me, it's kind of outrageous to not be a feminist, because what is feminism? I'll read it to you from the actual definition. Feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. And the main goals of feminism are freedom, equal opportunity, control over your life, for women. And so for me, I mean, do you want to have control of your life? Yes. And so unfortunately, the term feminist comes along with it comes this idea of man hating and bra burning and not shaving. And, I'm all for not shaving your legs sometimes, but, it doesn't have to be about that. It's supposed to be about gender equality. And on this earth, it's almost really exactly 50-50. There's a few more men, 50-50 men and women in the population of the whole earth. And so why wouldn't we want to have equal rights, but because of this like man hating aspect of the word, it's like if you're a feminist, that means you're anti-men, which is not what it's supposed to be about. As you know, if you've seen my podcast, I'm all for smashing the patriarchy, but that doesn't actually mean that you're against, hi, Abby, that you're against men in general. You could be against the patriarchy and not against individual men, because men are actually wrapped up in this patriarchal crap also. So like I said, I find that really interesting to say that you're not a feminist as a woman. And sometimes like in my college, the men who were like, "I'm a feminist," it's because they wanted to be sexier to women, honestly, like, "Oh, I'm a feminist. Oh, that means you're so sensitive to our rights," and so, but when men honestly are feminists, it makes sense. You have moms, you have sisters, you have daughters, and wanting equal rights, both sexes or all the sexes can want equal rights for everyone. So I was watching this documentary, The Feminists, what were they thinking? And it's interesting. One of the women says, talking about speaking up in school or wanting to raise your hand in the university, and no, the male teachers, not ever calling on her. And, when she spoke up about it, they said, "What are you, a suffragette?" Which is the women who are fighting for our right to vote. But it has like an old dowdy woman image, right? And so she said, "No, of course I don't want to be a suffragette. No, of course not." So she didn't want to say anything. And she said that's how it seems in more modern times, that you don't want to be considered a feminist because you don't want to be considered this like hippie, man-hating, throwing your bra on fire kind of woman. But and also in this documentary, they talk about some well-known feminists like Gloria Steinem, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, fighting for equality for women. So this doesn't actually have to do with hating men. It just has to do with wanting to be treated as equal human beings, which as any, not that women are a minority, because I just said they're 50%, but it sort of feels like we're a freaking minority, so any minority group will tell you, like, just trying to get equal rights, it seems like we should all just have them. And it's not true, both for minorities and for women. And then, of course, some well, I don't know if I call them newer because now I'm older, so it seems, but women like Oprah Winfrey, Barbara Walters, like really breaking through this glass ceiling in Hollywood, and having their own shows, and Barbara Walters being, I think she was the first female newscaster, um and really trying to break through these issues and stereotypes about women and that we can't do anything. So I talk about this in this group because, as you all know, that I talk about menopause a lot, but I also talk about, harnessing the power of women. And this topic of feminism, of course, is at any time in our lives. So in the movie, which is very interesting, and I'm going to post a link to it, or at least the title, to watch it on Netflix. There's a book that came out years ago, and it's a selection of photographs of women. It's called Emergence, and this woman, Cynthia McAdams, is the photographer, and it's pictures of women between 1974 and 1978, or 77. And she said that women looked different because of feminism. And she wanted to see if that was captured on film when you took a woman's picture. And, honestly, the pictures are very impressive, and they show a lot of the pictures from the book in the movie. And the women just really look like they have a lot of fire in their soul. They look like they're living their real truth, which I love, and being authentic. And that's what she wanted to capture, was the authenticity of these women. And so Jane Fonda is one of the women in the book. And, she's an actress, and I don't know how many of you know what an activist she was for women's rights, and still is. And she talks about how most girls, when they're young, are very feisty. We want to climb trees. We want to be in charge of things. We want to, and everyone has their own personality, but a lot of little girls are feisty, even the shy ones. And that happens when we're young. And then she says, but then that part goes way subterranean, she says. And, so girls are taught to be good girls, to stuff down their anger. We're conditioned to worry all the time about what other people feel first before our feelings, and kind of squash everything else down. And so she says the feisty part doesn't disappear. It doesn't get lost. And the goal of our lives is to bring this feistiness back. And I love that so much, because I feel like this menopause transition and beyond is where that feisty little girl that you always had. I mean, if you've watched me for a while, if you know me in person, I'm feisty. And it was taught to be, I was taught that was too much. And girls always taught, don't be too much. Don't be too loud. Be nice. Don't be mad. Don't be upset. Don't cry too much. Don't be insensitive, but don't be too sensitive, and it's it messes up our whole system, right? And so the bringing back of this feisty girl, I think, is one of the blessings of many menopause. We talk about the no fucks left to give, the fiery power of menopause, where you're like, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't have it in me to deal with this crap anymore. And, part of that is the hormonal and the tired, and, but it's the blessing of menopause, I think. And so another woman says about women, why do we smile so much? Why do we try to be so appealing? Why are we afraid to show our anger? And why is anger considered unfeminine? Why? And I will have a podcast soon in the next week or two with a woman named Juanita Huffnagel, who just wrote a book on anger. So I'm really excited to talk about, it was supposed to be today actually, but we both felt kind of sick the other day. So I look forward to talking about that, because why can't we be angry? Why do we have to just push everything down and push it down, push it down, push it down? And a word that I talked about with a friend the other day, and that came up in this documentary, is audacity, right? And I hope to one day use that in my in my coaching program, or write a book or something about the audacity of women. And so one of the definitions is that it's boldness, daring, fearlessness, but it can also be rude or disrespectful behavior. And I love this, a disregard of the constraints commonly imposed by convention. And so that I find is so important because I feel as we move through menopause, women often feel more audacious, more able to bring out this audacity or fearlessness or boldness, and not caring about, or not caring as much, at least, about these conventions and these boxes that we're put into as women. And so I talk about this. I think you see where I'm going here, but I talk about this because, first, to get rid of this stigma around the word feminism, and just know that being a feminist means, to me at least, embracing the power of being women, embracing this audacity to be bold and daring and fearless as women. And to, like I said, I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. Just to embrace this femaleness and our power. And I've said a couple of times, the, the patriarchy, if you want to call it that, fears women. And I feel like that's where all of this crap comes in, about pushing down women in the way of, you're too old. Once you're not conventionally youthfully beautiful anymore, then you're not worth anything. If you can't reproduce, you're not worth anything. If your children are out of the house, you're not worth anything. God forbid you're retired, then you're really not worth anything. And I feel like if we can harness this feminist movement vibe and bring that into ourselves, I feel like we can harness then the power of menopause and bring back this feisty girl that we once were. And the girl who knew what she wanted, she knew what she liked, she knew how to be in the world. And, and then, puberty comes and it gets all fuzzy and you're like, I don't know what to do. I guess I'm just supposed to be looking at boys and making myself look pretty. Like, what a crock, right? Because even as a girl, for me, I loved plants and nature and playing and making things, trying to make my brother eat them, and making potions and things in my yard. And then it was like, oh, that's little girl crap that you don't do anymore, because now you're supposed to be pretty and you shouldn't be digging up worms and things like that. And then as an adult, I come back to be an herbalist. And I don't really use worms, but I would if I had to. But, digging in the earth and playing with plants, that's my whole being really now. And so I knew that as a little girl, I knew myself. And so if we can use this feminist movement power to be who we are, know what we want, know that we deserve things in the world that we desire, know that we have value as women, know that that value can't be changed by anyone else's thoughts about us or ideas of, we shouldn't do something. We can't because we're women. You can't because you're older, or you shouldn't dress that way, or you shouldn't go on that vacation. You shouldn't climb in the Andes because you're on your downward spiral, right? And so harnessing this feminist power is so connected to menopause in my mind, and to bring back this feisty girl and to be a feisty older woman. And that is the joy to me of getting older, is this idea of leaving behind all of these preconceived notions of what we're supposed to be like, and just being truly ourselves and truly who we want to be, and be as feisty as you want to be. Or if you don't want to be feisty, don't be feisty. But I think these women really have a lot to show us in the power of just really deciding what we deserve as individuals and as a community, and just really going for that and not listening to the crap that is out there. And that is always my message, knowing what's yours and what isn't, and just listening to that voice inside of you that says you have to be or do or go through menopause in the way that feels authentic to you. So thank you so much. I think I've talked enough. And I would love to hear what you think, and love to hear if you identify as a feminist, or if you're afraid or dislike the word. And and how this all feels to you and how you would like to bring your feistiness back, and what that means to you. So thank you so much. I will talk to you next week.